As I'm doing my rewatch of Degrassi, I've been noticing some rather troubling comments throughout Season 8 through Season 10, essentially narrowing down Claire's, Allie's, Connor's, and Casey's characters to fit Emma's, Manny's, Toby's, and Sean's characters respectively. And I feel that really ignores a lot of the individual facets of each of the characters. True, each of them fall into very similar archetypes, but they're not the exact same. They didn't just copy and paste the characters from the next generation. When introduced, Casey was a bad boy. Like Sean, he came from a very troubled home life and was embarrassed by it. He had a bit of an angry streak and could be rather dangerous to be around when he's feeling that way. He was prone to bouts of anger and felt a great deal of remorse for what had happened in the past, but that's where the similarities stop between them. Whereas Sean was quick to give up on himself and was prone to sabotaging his own happiness, Casey's anger was focused less on himself and more on other people. His mom, Coach Carson, his dad. Oftentimes when there were issues in his life, it was because of other people. It's also hard to ignore the fact that Casey was simply more of a joiner than Sean. Not only was Casey on the basketball team for 2 years in a row, but he was also on the football team. He felt comfortable going to Power Squad functions, especially with his girlfriend, and having a group of pretty normal, mostly straight-edge guys around. True, he could be rather meat-headed and make a lot of stupid decisions like Sean, especially when his fears played into his decisions, but he's still a very different person. And then with Connor and Toby, sure, they were both nerds and didn't really care about the superficial concerns of high school or social life, but they arrived at that in very different ways. For one, Connor has Asperger's. He doesn't exactly have control about caring about superficial social norms. It's something that he has to learn. Whereas Toby, he's just not interested. It's not due to a disorder as far as we know, and what he likes happens to be outside of what the popular kids are into. And there's also the fact that Toby has grown to not care about any of this stuff. After having to go through 2 friends' deaths and going through his whole school career as the nerd that no one cares about, he's come to realize that things that people care about in high school, like popularity or having a girl who can easily make or break your reputation on your side, just doesn't matter, especially in the grand scheme of things. Very quickly, he was just over the fakeness of everything in high school and was very much ready to get out of that environment. And then in some areas, Allie and Manny are pretty similar. They've made a ton of mistakes when it comes to guys. Both had pregnancy scares, and both's reputations have taken a nosedive because of their extracurricular activities. At some point, they did both come to desire popularity and rising to the top of the social hierarchy in high school, but Manny never really regretted what she became. She regretted the particular decisions she made, like having sex with Craig without a condom, but if I'm remembering it correctly, I don't think she necessarily felt sorry for stealing Craig away from Ashley. If anything, I think she felt more sorry that Craig played Ashley after he'd said that he was going to stop seeing her and be totally devoted to Manny. She hated that she became known as a school slut, but still embraced her sexuality. And not to mention, Manny didn't start out that way. It was a gradual change from her introduction. She started out as cutesy and innocent, but then made the conscious change to express as a more sexual human being, which isn't necessarily bad. But as far as we know with Allie, right out the gate she wanted everything that Manny came to desire. She wanted to be popular, she wanted to hang out with all the cool kids, she wanted to be where Holly J was in the social hierarchy. She wanted to have the cutest boyfriend, and for guys to oogle over just how beautiful she was. Now, one big difference between the two was Allie wasn't a boyfriend stealer. Manny had a pretty bad habit of doing that, and didn't seem to mind, unfortunately. That's more Jenna's job. With Allie, it's more of a story of a girl with a lot of smarts, but who wanted to apply her energy more towards guys and the exact superficialness of high school that a person like Toby rejected. She was book smart, but not boy smart. And unfortunately, she'd use her book smarts to do crazy things with guys, like writing and turning in an essay for Drew. There's also the fact that Allie ultimately decided to use her smarts in her future. She decided to pursue a career in science, going to MIT, and rejecting the frivolities of the past. She would still get misguided when boys came into the picture, but she ultimately decided to go back to something that she'd always been good at, science. Whereas Manny, school was never really her favorite thing. Sure, she was into biology, and apparently really good at it, but that was never what she wanted to do. Early what she wanted was to go into fashion, and then she decided that acting was her calling. A career in the academic arts was never her plan. And then there's Claire and Emma. Both very school-centric, both come off as rather stuck up and not afraid to voice their opinions, both also prone to jealousy, and both experiencing a crisis involving their futures and what they had previously planned. These two, I have a little more trouble putting into words the exact differences between them, but they certainly do exist. For one, a lot of Claire's morals come from her faith, whereas Emma, she spends a lot of time looking at documentaries and really considering the ethics of the world around her. And even though they both could be a bit of drama queens, I would argue that Claire is much more dramatic than Emma, especially because just how no BS Emma was. When Emma thought she was pregnant and later found out she wasn't, she didn't try to hide the fact that she'd gotten her period to try to keep Sean out of the army, which was exactly what she wanted. Whereas Claire was totally into playing games to manipulate people to what she wanted, acting out to try to prevent her parents from divorcing, and preferring to keep secrets than to confront her problems head on. Whereas when Emma did something wrong, for the most part, she admitted it. Claire, it depends on if it benefited her situation. It was certainly hard to admit when she wasn't perfect. If you look at the whole history of Degrassi, you're bound to find similarities, because there are similarities between different people. Why do certain cliques in high school survive long after decades have passed? Because they're generalized enough to consistently catch people based on a few specific similarities. But just as not every jock or prep or goth kid is the same as all the others in that clique, neither is every Degrassi character. And that's another really great part about Degrassi. They're able to show so many different people that are so different from one another. It could be very easy to have a carbon copy of someone like Emma or Manny, but they're consistently able to bring about new people, sometimes with quirks that we've seen before, but always in a different light. It's one of the reasons why I hate when people bash the show for using similar plot lines. Anytime pregnancy comes up or someone bringing a weapon to school, it's always compared to what's come before, but that doesn't recognize all the differences between them. Degrassi never does a storyline the same way twice. They may echo to the past, but they'll never be the past. Thank you very much for consuming this video, and until next time.